Is this thing on?
Hi, welcome to another episode of Voice Podcast. This is a podcast for students by students. I'm your host today, Ellie Steele, and today I'm joined by E.L. Adams II, who is a clinical and educational psychologist, and he's here to share some tips and tools for mental health and talk about the stigma around mental health, just to give you guys some more tools and resources to help us kind of get through this crazy time that we're living in. So EL, do you want to tell us a little bit about you, how you came into psychology, and what your background is maybe?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I kind of started off in business. I was wanted to be a business major in university, and then my grades weren't that good, and my coach, I played basketball, coach kind of came down on me, and I had to take an elective, which happened to be psychology.
Yeah.
And then once I was forensic psych at that, so forensic psychology, and then I really took to it. I was a bit more motivated, a lot more interested and engaged. So from then, I just switched my program from there. And I've always, once you start to get into the study of psychology, you kind of realize that you've always had an interest in it. It just wasn't as defined, or you might watch a TV show here or read a book here, but you never said, "Oh, I actually like psychology." So I got into psych and social joint major, and then went on to grad school where study clinical and educational psych.
Nice. And you have a practice in Kingston and Ottawa, is that right?
Yep, I'm fresh to Ottawa in a year and some change now, last September. But I moved from Ottawa, where I was for 9 years. So I worked with the school board there and in a private practice, and then moved down here to open up a practice. And now I go between the two. Yeah.
Nice. And you work primarily with, is it youth and adolescents? What's your demographic?
Yep, youth and adolescents. So some 6 to 23.
Yeah.
Ages 6 to 23.
Nice.
23, or as you get older, you have a little bit more therapy and one-on-one. When they're young, like 6, you're working more with parents and some of the kids, kind of a mix of the two. Yeah.
Group stuff. Yeah.
I mean, you're always going to work with the parents, but still.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Of course. Okay. So tell me, in your clinical practice, from your experiences, what do you see are the most common mental health issues that the adolescents are dealing with? People in our student population, maybe like the 18 to kind of 25 range. What do you find is happening for those people?
Yeah, I would say anxiety and depression, they're really big.
Yeah.
You have people with some self-concept type challenges, so self-esteem, self-confidence, and image. But I think some of the biggest things that I've seen, or what seems to be more common, would be anxiety and depression. Given the situations that they find themselves in, over the pressures of school, and then looking ahead to what's going to be their career and trying to work within these deadlines, people become a lot more anxious, and they become a lot worried, and they take the worries graduate into that fear, where we call anxiety, and then the depression. Sometimes people just being unhappy about certain situations, and often too, we always think about depression as a sadness, but often people can find themselves in frustrating situations, and because they're frustrated with these situations, they don't feel that they have the means or the tools to make it out of these situations or to manage. So then that turns into sadness, kind of like a helplessness type thing.
Right. Yeah.
So given the challenges and the requirements that are asked of them for college, and given where they are situated in their lives, I think anxiety and depression is common. And it's not just those main things too. Sometimes it's spread and generalized through a lot of things and experiences that date before, but I would say anxiety and depression. Yeah.
And definitely the COVID situation has increased that feeling of powerlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, I would imagine, right? So people that were maybe struggling with kind of the typical stressors of first, second year college, that's all worse now, would you say? Like there's just a higher stress level exacerbating those issues?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything now, what was maybe at a certain level has for sure increased, just because of that unknown, well, not the unknown factor, but the factor of COVID that we have no control. Like a lot of times with anxiety, it's that idea of uncertainty, right? Yeah. I'm uncertain about what's going to happen, so now I'm worried about it. But when you have something that's external to your usual day-to-day situations, and what we now have to face. We're kind of under the control of what COVID dictates right now.
Yeah, a
So
lot of
given our daily plans, our future endeavors, just certain things, like even when people saying, oh, well, I was going to have an internship in this area. And now because of COVID and the restrictions, that's not possible. So how do you go about this and still maintain the course that you were set on?
yeah.
It's been very difficult for people.
Yeah, and that's certainly the case at St. Lawrence. I mean, I was supposed to be in a placement this term. Well, I was supposed to be in a placement last term and this term, and those just didn't happen. So, and my program is 100% online. And I know a lot of people are in that boat where they feel like they're missing out on what would have been their normal college education, for one, experiences, the social experience, like so much of what you're expecting in your college life has been on hold or suspended or just not even going to happen at this point, right? So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think that idea, expectations, like I try to tell people, like when we're working with dealing with life, it's really, I try to have them focus on your transitions and expectations. And when those expectations aren't met, how do you manage? But when you have a COVID that you really is determining these expectations or now forcing these new expectations, then it's really unsettling, because you do have to put certain things on pause, or you really have to look at approaching things in a different way, which is not what you would ever envision in a option 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It's just something that's totally different. So it's been hard for people to adjust to that.
yeah, trying to sort out those. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the stigma around mental health, and this idea that like so many of us have this difficulty talking about mental health issues, or just even seeking out support and counseling. What are your experiences with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you put mental health in this different type of category when, in, in all fairness, it's just your health. Like, it's health. It's not a physical health. It's not a mental health. Like, your body's not going to say, oh, your knee's hurting, so you shouldn't be depressed because you're not as mobile as you used to be, and vice versa. It's not going to be like you have a mental health concern that your body might not react to because of it. Like, your body won't separate these things.
Yeah.
I think when you're looking at your overall health, we talk about overall functioning, right? You're functioning, and that's in your cognition, that's in your physical, that's in your academic, that's in your social, all these areas that when it comes to a mental health issue, people often shy away from it. And if it is your mental health that's like, if you're physically you're doing pretty good, and all of a sudden your mental health is taking a hit, then naturally you should be able to go and run to somebody and say, hey, like when it comes to COVID, like here in Kingston, when people are getting, or at least during the summer, I haven't been around the Leon Center since the summer, but during the summer when there's people having concerns, you saw a lineup around the Leon Center, people waiting just to see, like to be preventative, right? To say, let me see if I can prevent harming anyone else by figuring this out.
Yeah.
Whereas the same thing, you would want prevention, because prevention is much easier than the treatment. Once you get into treatment, you're not sure how you're going to react to things. So it would be really nice if people could be proactive with mental health and say, yeah, you know what, I'm not feeling well, or I've had a few rough weeks with exams. I should go talk to somebody just to help me figure some things out, just to give me a soundboard to say, what are some things or some advice or some recommendations that might be helpful for me as I navigate these difficult waters.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of normalizing the whole conversation about getting support and help and managing it. Like, just like you eat well, you try to manage your sleep and you brush your teeth and maybe you try to exercise. Like, it should just be part of that overall wellness approach, right? Instead of something that we feel like we should just be able to handle, and we shouldn't have any sort of problems with that or need outside help. And the top performers, we know, they have coaches, they have support, they have people that help them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So having someone on your side to help support your mental health and make sure it stays healthy, right? Like, I like what you said about the prevention. I mean, that's so much easier to recognize. Yeah, I've had a couple of busy weeks with exams or something, and now maybe I need to do something to relax. Instead of just diving into the next thing. I think we miss that a lot of the time. Like, people don't say, okay, yeah, now I've had a really busy time, maybe I should take a staycation, because that's about all we can do.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Or meditate, or, maybe go for a run or something that would help alleviate that stress. Because it's like, you're right, it's so connected. The physical body body, mental body, you can't separate them.
Mm-mm.
It's all connected.
Yeah, I think just to add to that too, the same way you were talking about, like the way we eat, the way we exercise, like it's active, right? It's ongoing. So the same thing for your mental health. If you can say this stuff needs to be ongoing, and maybe you monitor it and say from time to time, oh, I've had this type of situation, or going into these presentations, I seems to rile me up the wrong way. Maybe I can talk to somebody to help me again prepare for these, or to help me manage, because you're looking at manage. Elimination would be ideal for sure, but we're trying to manage and say, how can I make it from one step to the next in
Right.
the best way possible? And also, like you mentioned too, like what's going to not only prevent it, but what's going to keep me here?
Yeah.
Like what's going to keep me in this mental health space of well-being? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think it's complete philosophy shift for so
Mm-hmm.
many people, where we're so wired to just react to a problem
Yeah.
rather than be proactive and try to stay well. And I mean, I know when I was in my 20s, I wasn't paying attention to that stuff either. So benefit from my wisdom.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I had done this when I was 25 or
Right.
22. Like, make that a priority, the self-care stuff, and taking care of it, because you don't want to get into a situation where now you've hit rock bottom and you have to try to rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more challenging.
It is.
So let's talk about strategies for a minute. So what would you recommend that people, maybe let's 5, 6, whatever, how many strategies, or let's name a few things that you think people can do right now to help manage that, to
Yeah.
help take care of their mental well-being? What would you say?
Well, yeah, the idea of coping strategies is just to speak to that point, like you said, is what's going to keep me here. And then if if I do take a hit, or if my mental health does take a hit, what would help me bring myself back? Again, it's no different than saying, okay, well, the flu or the COVID is going around. These are some things that these are some steps that need to be put in place so that I can stay away or minimize the risk. And then if I do get COVID, like the doctor would say, okay, well, you have to go home, you have to do these things, you have to make sure you flush yourself with fluids, whatever.
Mhm.
So you're saying, okay, same thing with mental health. What are some strategies that work for me that keep me here? I know during the pandemic, personally, one of my outlets is going to the gym. So the weight room. I've always done it. I've always had it in my routine, but I never really thought about it. I never thought about it. And then only when COVID took that option away, I had to recreate and work out at home. So I had to buy a couple of things, and I had to do some at home workouts, your push ups, all body weight type thing, right? So then you say, okay, this is something that I can do. This is something that works for me. Now, there may be some people who care nothing for the gym and physical activity, and that's perfectly fine. I think what's important is that you find and you develop that toolkit. And we call it that toolkit because just like a construction worker goes to the job with a construction kit or a toolkit, but they won't just have a hammer. They'll need like a saw. They'll need a few items to help me manage all the difficulties that come with this job. So outside of the gym, I like basketball. But then you take away the courts, I don't have basketball. And then even in professional sports, they postpone the season. So it's like, okay, there goes two of my main strategies that I don't have access to, or that need to be changed to whatever degree with the lifting weights.
Yeah.
So then I like music. Music was aplenty, and TV was aplenty.
Yeah.
Parents and families and friends, that was changed a little bit. So I had to rely on, virtual communication. I think when you're looking at strategies, you have to find things that you like, things that you say put me in a good mood. You want to have more effective versus ineffective. Sometimes people might rely on substance, and if you want to have a drink or so, that would be okay. But if you rely on this drink to get you to a place where you're feeling well, that would be something that's a bit ineffective, because that becomes a toxic type of pattern. So you want to say, what are some things that would be effective for me? And if you don't know, then this is when you start to say, let's trial and error. Let's try to find some things like book clubs, or maybe running groups, or maybe you want to take on a new language. Maybe you want to study something different. Maybe you want to pick up a new trade or skill, or maybe you want to do some renos, whatever. You want to try to find some things, and you have to find things if you don't know, because you'll have to develop this. And this is the developmental process of you creating this toolkit.
Yeah, I like that. Develop, go look, figure it out. see what works, see what doesn't work. And I'm glad that you brought up the substance thing, because that's a maladaptive coping strategy that
Mm-hmm.
so many people turn to. It's often the first thing we do,
Yep.
right? We think about a substance, and whether that's alcohol or drugs or food,
Mm-hmm.
there's all kinds of things that we might turn to as a way to help deal with that stress, but it ends up causing more stress, right?
Yeah.
Like that in the long run,
Right.
like you said, a small amount might be okay, but if it's, how effective is it really? It might be effective in the moment, but if you look at the long term, it might not be effective at all, especially if that's the only strategy you have.
Right.
So for me, I have to get out in the woods. Like that's just, I'm thankful, grateful that I live in the country.
Okay.
So being able to get out in the woods is like my number one strategy.
Nice.
Hot
Nice.
Epsom salt baths, I'm all over that.
Yeah.
So hot baths with some essential oils or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Reading fiction, instead of reading nonfiction, because as students we're all reading nonfiction all the time. So
Yep.
being able to read fiction, yeah, and even Netflix, sometimes zoning out to a
Yeah.
good series or something. I try to limit myself to like one episode at a time, so I don't end up sitting on the couch for 4 hours, because that's easy
Right.
to do too. But
Yeah.
um, but I think you're totally right about finding the strategies that work for you, and don't be afraid to try things. And even just do a Google search. What are other
Yeah.
people doing? See
Yeah.
what looks interesting.
Yeah.
So
I think with that idea too, like sometimes if you don't know, like look around. Sometimes like if you have a best friend who does something,
yeah,
try it.
yeah,
Try it and see how helpful it might be. And if it's not, then you move on to option B, C, D. But also too with coping skills, I want people to understand that you'll have to give it a good try. Like to try something one time and be like, oh well, it didn't work for me. Like one thing that with anxiety and with sometimes when we're becoming overwhelmed, panic disorders, I'll always say, you know what, you have to breathe. And people say, well, breathing doesn't work. And I say, well, you're breathing regardless. Like whether you focus on your breathing or whether you're not focused on your
right,
breathing, like it's really, I try to show people it's empowering to know that you have the control over your breath in this moment. If it's not medical and if it's not physical activity, that you're expending so much energy that you have to keep up with your breath pattern
yeah,
or pace, then I want people to know that hey, breathing is a strategy that doesn't have to be eventful. Like you don't have to have these grand like getaways and whatever. Sometimes it is like you said, just a nice bath, just a nice place to sit down and calm myself. As much as I am a person of noise, like I like music, I like TV. Sometimes when I go home, if the day's been too much, I just want total silence. So I'll just do everything in total silence. No TV, no music, just
yeah.
kind of operate until I have that feeling where I say, okay, I'm good and I'm able to move on. So yeah, sometimes it is just figuring it out, but it doesn't have to be this grand, extravagant type of thing.
Yeah. And that just brought up another point for me. I just like you to speak to this for a second. Is you just pointed to your ability to hear your own mental state,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you said sometimes I just need quiet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all quiet until I feel better. And I think a lot of people don't have that connection,
Mm-hmm.
like the ability to hear what's going on and to actually even sense their stress level. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think it's just a little bit of self-awareness, like you said, when we were younger, I'm 40 now. So when I was 20, that sometimes you just kind of just trying to make it and trying to get through things and you just kind of attacking what's in front of you for the day. But to be more and more in tune, it's like they say, even again, back to physical health, you listen to your body. If all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit slow, sluggish, if all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit, um, I guess, off your normal pattern, then you say, okay, listen to your body. And what does your body need? Do you need more sleep? If it's been exam time and you've had, 5 hours of sleep in the last 2 days, then listen to your body. It's the same thing kind of with mental health. If you're starting to have these feelings that aren't what you're used to, if you need to have these things, it's kind of like having a radar. And once you have these things, a lot of times too, we do things not understanding why we do it. It's just the natural way that we deal and we cope with our. So, like for instance, I have a intolerance to cashews. I didn't figure that out until maybe 5 years ago, but I've never ever liked the idea of peanuts, never liked the idea of nuts. And then all of a sudden, once I tried it, and I was like, oh, so sometimes we have a natural aversion or a natural way of functioning that sometimes we have to listen to.
Yeah.
And once you have that feeling where you say, okay, I'm good, 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes is good for me. But if you need the rest of the night, if you need to zone out, if you need to tell your friends it's been cool, but I can't hang out this weekend, it's really important to listen to what your body is telling you, because often it's giving you cues. It's kind of like a car. Like your car will give you these cues. Like we have these indicators where I'm going to turn, or that your oil is low, or you need more gas, or something's wrong with your engine. Your body usually speaks to you if you can be more aware of it.
Yeah, nice. I like that. That's important. Being
Mhm.
able to hear it. You have to start there. If you can't hear it, you can't intervene, right?
Mhm.
Like to recognize.
Yeah.
Okay, so if students wanted to get in touch with you, wanted to be able to do some counseling or work with you, what would they have to do to get?
Just give a call. They could call the office, which is 613-547-5444, I believe, or the cell phone is 613-709-5363. There's ELA Psychology at gmail.com. There's also ELApsychology.com, where they can look on my website, where I have a bit more background, a bit more examples of the services I provide, as well as some examples of a little podcast I did where I incorporate music and mental health to, again, lessen the stigma and show how music speaks to our emotions and moods that we experience.
Of course,
So those are all areas where they could contact me. ELApsychology.com would be a good place that has all the numbers you need, or emails to contact me.
excellent. Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this. It's such an important topic right now, and I hope you guys got some good tools. You can start listening to yourself a little bit more, figure out some strategies.
Mhm.
Remember to prioritize your mental well-being just like you would the rest of your well-being.
Right.
So you guys can listen to Voice Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. So YouTube on Voice Podcast, Instagram at SA Voice Podcast. We're on SoundCloud, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Play, and we're on Apple Podcasts. So thanks so much, GL, and have a great day.
Thanks, Ellen. You as well.
Bye for now.